Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is Daredevil, number 230, Born Again, the namesake for this entire series event. I guess you'd call it story arc. We get a really nice cover with Ben Urich with his hand busted in the shadow of Daredevil behind him. Pretty cool. Anyhow, so last we left, our buddy Matt Murdock made it to his gym and basically collapsed after a series of many events, including getting his ass kicked by the Kingpin, getting thrown into the Hudson River in the middle of the winter, and then getting stabbed by Turk dressed as Santa Claus. And this kind of recaps the events. Here you have a voice in the background as you see a dead heartbeat. No, he can't die. You get a recap of what just happened in the previous issue. Frank Miller performing his gym shooter duties right here in a very artistic way. And then boom, heartbeat. He kicks, and there you get to see where Matt ended up. He's in a church, a nun praising God that he's alive. And there you have it, the splash page. Born Again. Frank Miller, David Mazzuchelli. So we get rotating story right here. It jumps around. So here we have Karen. She's made it back to America, probably crossing the border right now. Still trying to get to Matt. Still thinking Matt will save her. You get the Kingpin right here, beating the shit out of a bunch of dudes in karate gis. But his obsession is this. He knows Matt's alive. He didn't do the job properly. We go over to Foggy. He's accepted the job, probably a job from the Kingpin, if I'm reading this properly, even though it's not really explicitly explained. And he's still with this freaking bitch. Then we go back to Ben, and it's the aftermath of what happened in the parking lot. His hands broken. Officer Manoli's gotten pretty much all of his bones broken by that oversized mongoloid nurse. And then we go back to Matt, and here you have, again, boilerplate Jim Shooter era, explaining who's Daredevil, what is Daredevil capable of, what is his situation, and a really good line right here, never give up, never. That's pretty much, Daredevil and Matt Murdock in this storyline. You have Karen Page, long monologue, internal monologue of her finally making the Penn Station and just being a freaking sick human being. I'm joking. There's a part of me that's really sympathetic to Karen Page, and then there's a part of me that's this freaking lady. And here's Kingpin, asking for Nuke, and Wesley kind of freaking out about him even mentioning the name. Here's great Kingpin dialogue. I did not invite debate. That is Kingpin right there. And this is really interesting. So here he's Ben is in his apartment with his wife, and they're talking about what happened to him, and she's worried that he's gonna get himself killed, and Ben is saying here, don't say the name, don't say the name. He's so in shock after getting his hand broken and seeing Manoli get beat up that he's in fear of everything. He's afraid of the Kingpin, so much so that he won't even say Matt Murdock's name, and you'll see why this is important at the end. So we skip around, and this is basically Matt Murdock getting awake, figuring out where he is at. He's in the basement of a church, but the more important part here is this character Maggie, the sister, and her introduction, and her bringing Murdock back into his bed because he's not healthy yet. You get Karen Page calling Foggy, basically reuniting with him right over the phone, finding out all this stuff that has kind of happened since she's been away, and Foggy kind of like trying to figure out what the hell's going on. That time when you're reuniting with someone you haven't heard in a long time. You get JJ ripping into Ben, calling him out for being a coward, for not following the story through and kind of wasting his time. JJ's always been kind of a dickhole character, but in this case, this is actually not only using the character properly, but making a good storyline point, right? And here you go. You stay a good boy. You remember the Kingpin's watching. Kingpin has has eyes everywhere on Ben. Here we go around. Matt Murdock's caught a fever. Is fighting pneumonia. The man that took her to America, our Karen, clearly, not a good guy, and Karen's kind of fantasy of trying to get away from him easily is not working out as well as she thought it was. And this is probably, to me, the one thing that stands out the most in this issue to me, and this is the panel buildup. So Ben is working a puff piece because he doesn't want to work crime because he's terrified of the Kingpin. And all throughout this, he gets a phone call, and it's Manoli asking him, hey, I still have the story about what happened to Matt Murdock. Do you want it? And he's busy, like, I'm busy. I don't know who that is, etc. Just trying to keep the Kingpin from killing him. And, but Manoli mentions Matt Murdock. And that's where things go wrong for him. And then here comes the nurse. And she takes care of the phone, and she tells him, my employer would like you to hear this, Mr. Eric. And she proceeds to choke him out and murder the lieutenant. And this is amazing visual storytelling by Dave Mazzuchelli. Just absolutely amazing. And great dialogue taking advantage of it. You can look at this dialogue and all this backstory going on just gives you just such a cinematic feel. There it is. And you have Matt going back and remembering this cross. This is important from the previous issue because the cross he felt when he was a little child. He remembers this cross. And I'm going to skip a couple pages. The important part being here is that Ben just being haunted by what happened to Officer Manoli, Matt fighting this fever, and Karen finally reuniting with Foggy. And they go back and forth, and he's trying to figure out what happened to Karen. Foggy's just being the usual Foggy, kind of naive and being a good friend. And Karen is realizing something. Like, Foggy explains what happened to Matt because she's asking for Matt. And she realizes the gravity of what she's done to Matt Murdock and Daredevil. And in some ways, like, I'm not sure if Frank Miller was trying to make her sympathetic or not. And in some ways, you do kind of feel sympathy for Karen Page, even though she's... what she did is really unforgivable to Matt. But, the artwork and Frank Miller's dialogue works to kind of add more depth to the character. And here's a really great one. So the Maggie, the sister, prays for Matt Murdock to survive the pneumonia that he has. And then Ben comes to a decision. He's sitting there remembering what happened to Manoli and realizing that he can't be afraid to say Matt Murdock's name, and he can't be afraid to continue and go after the Kingpin. This is a great character arc in just one issue, right? He starts where he's so terrified of what he saw that he won't even say the name Matt Murdock, and by the end of it, he finally realizes his hand's healed, and he has to find the courage within him to say Matt Murdock's name and go after the Kingpin. And then you get the craziest twist at the end right here, which is Matt survived the pneumonia, and he's kind of listening to everybody's heartbeat, kind of getting a feel. He's kind of listening to Maggie's heartbeat, and realizing it. It's very familiar sounding. The scent is familiar sounding. And you get the crazy plot twist right here. Are you my mother? Of course not, child. A heartbeat can tell you a lot. Hers just jumped. She's lying. Freaking nuts, man. You never thought you'd run into this in this issue. But it is incredible. Yeah, man. It's like there's not a ton of action that goes on in this issue. But it's all just plot lines and character arcs and storytelling that is earned from the previous issues and just builds up into the next one, which is Saved, which I'll go over in probably next week. But yeah, man, real pleasure reading these issues. They really are something. Anyhow, that's it. Let me know what you think. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you have any comments on this issue or just this entire story arc, leave them down below, and I'll see you next time.